Have you ever noticed? If working 16 hours a day really led to freedom, then why are so many hustlers exhausted, broke, and sick? We were told that hustle is the way out, the great American cure for financial struggle. Grind harder, sleep less, want it more. But here's the punchline. Hustle doesn't guarantee wealth. More often, it guarantees burnout. I've sat in coffee shops at midnight and watched it with my own eyes. Men and women, still in their work clothes, climbing into their cars to drive Uber after finishing a full shift. They sip another energy drink, post a hashtag rise and grind selfie to prove they're winning, and then crawl back into traffic, their eyes heavy with fatigue. To the world, they look ambitious, but inside, they feel trapped, like hamsters spinning a wheel that never stops. America has dressed up exhaustion and sold it as ambition. We celebrate the 80-hour workweek as if misery were a medal of honor. But deep down, most people know the truth. They're not hustling toward freedom. They're hustling deeper into chains. So here's the question we're going to wrestle with together. If hustling harder isn't the answer, then what is? How do you break free without breaking down? Let's peel back the glossy Instagram slogans and talk about the reality underneath. Because the dark side of hustle isn't just fatigue, it's the quiet theft of your health, your joy, and your freedom. You know what I see everywhere I go in America now? Side hustles stacked like bricks on a collapsing wall. The guy who clocks out of his 9 to 5 only to pull on a DoorDash cap at 7 p.m. The young woman with Amazon FBA tutorials playing in her headphones while she spends weekends packing boxes in her garage. The dad who squeezes freelance design jobs into his lunch breaks, tapping away on a laptop in his car because it's the only quiet space he has. Everyone's got a thing on the side, and another, and another. And you can almost admire the stamina until you notice what's unraveling underneath. The late-night deliveries leave your body running on gas station coffee and microwaved burritos. Relationships bend and eventually snap because there's no time left for your kids, your partner, or even yourself. You tell yourself it's temporary, that someday, when the hustle pays off, you'll rest. But the truth is, the sleep debt keeps stacking, the doctor's visits creep up, and you wake one morning realizing your body has been cashing checks your ambition wrote years ago. Here's the cruel twist. Society pats you on the back for this slow suicide. Hustle has become a religion in America. We hand out moral badges for overwork. We glorify exhaustion like it's a medal of honor. Look at him grinding all night. She's unstoppable, up at 4 a.m. every day. Never mind that he's drowning in medical bills. Never mind that she cries into her steering wheel on the way to work. The culture bows to the grind, not the outcome. And underneath all that glorification is a nasty little truth nobody likes to say out loud. Most hustlers aren't building freedom. They're just trading more slices of their life for slightly larger checks. It's the same hamster wheel, just painted with entrepreneurial colors. Instead of one boss, you now serve 5 different apps. Instead of one job, you've multiplied your chains. I know this world because I grew up inside it. In the America I came from, we were told the hustle was the ticket out. You don't complain, you just grind harder. But what they didn't tell us was that hustling harder doesn't necessarily open the door. It often just digs the hole deeper. I've sat across from friends in their 30s, gray hairs already popping, who brag about working 3 jobs. They say it with pride, but I can see the fatigue in their eyes. And here's the question I always want to ask them. though sometimes I bite my tongue. Are you free yet? Or just busy? Because busy isn't the same as free. Busy is just a shinier prison cell. The problem is not lack of effort. God knows Americans are some of the hardest workers in the world. The problem is direction. We keep pushing harder, thinking effort alone is the key, but it's like rowing a boat against the current. The more you row, the more exhausted you get without ever reaching the shore. And that's the part we need to pause and look at with clear eyes. Hustle culture tells us the answer is more hours, more gigs, more sacrifice. But what if the answer isn't more at all? What if the way out begins by reframing the entire game we're playing? Now, before you think I'm here to spit on hustle and declare it the enemy, let me set the record straight. Hustle isn't evil, it's just incomplete. Like a hammer that someone's trying to use to build an entire house. Sure, you need it, but it's not the whole toolkit. The problem isn't that you work hard. The problem is when hard work becomes the only strategy, the only story you know how to tell yourself. Because the real question of life isn't, how many hours can I work before my body collapses? It's, what systems can I build so the hours I do work actually buy back my freedom? Think about that. Every time you trade your time for money, you're making a deal with the clock. And the clock always wins. You don't out-hustle time. You either learn how to bend it by creating systems, assets, and leverage, or you spend your life bargaining with it, one overtime shift at a time. Let me put it another way. The goal isn't to wear hustle like a badge. It's to use it like a bridge to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Nobody builds a bridge just to live on it. It's supposed to take you somewhere else. Hustle, in its purest form, should be temporary, a sprint, a focused season where you pour yourself into something bigger. But too many people confuse the sprint for the marathon. They get stuck in forever hustle mode, as if grinding endlessly were the destination itself. I've met entrepreneurs in New York who wear their 100-hour weeks like war medals. They brag about it over drinks, slamming down shots like soldiers telling battle stories. But when you peel back the surface, they're not free. They're chained to clients, to payroll, to an endless treadmill of expectations. Hustle gave them the illusion of control, but robbed them of the very freedom they set out to find. The reframe is this: hustle is a tool, a stage, a temporary accelerator, but it should never become your permanent identity. Because once hustle becomes who you are, you'll never know who you could be without it. And trust me, you don't want to be 60 years old, still grinding, still hustling, while your body begs for rest and your soul wonders what it was all for. Here's the truth nobody preaches on Instagram. Hustle doesn't scale. Systems scale. Assets scale. People scale. Hustle? Hustle is fuel. You need it to start the fire, but if you think you'll heat an entire winter with a handful of matches, you're in for a cold night. So instead of asking, how much more can I do? Ask, what can I build so I don't have to keep doing it forever? That's the mental shift, the pivot from hustler to builder, from worker to architect. Because one can only dig trenches, but the other designs aqueducts. I know this is uncomfortable to hear because hustle feels safe. It feels tangible. You know if you put in 10 hours, you'll get paid for 10 hours. Systems? That feels abstract, risky, uncertain. But here's what I've learned traveling the world and meeting people who've actually broken free. The leap into building is always scary, but it's the only leap that pays off long term. So let's pause here, because I want you to hold this idea in your mind. Hustle is a bridge, not a badge, a tool, not an identity. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start channeling your energy into something more sustainable. And that brings us to the next step, the part most hustlers never learn: how to channel that raw energy into leverage, systems, and strategies that actually compound over time. Because hustle alone won't save you, but hustle, channeled wisely, that's where freedom begins. Now, if hustle is just the bridge, the real question is, where are you directing all that energy? Because raw hustle by itself is like water leaking through your fingers. It slips away the second you stop moving. But when you channel it, when you guide it with purpose, it can carve mountains, it can power cities. So, let's get specific. Where should that energy go? First, into skills that compound. Not just skills that pay the bills today, but skills that grow in value the more you use them. Think coding, storytelling, design, leadership, negotiation. Skills that make you more valuable with time, not less. A man who spends 10 years driving Uber becomes a tired driver. A man who spends 10 years mastering leadership becomes the one who hires drivers. See the difference? One path burns you out. The other path multiplies you. Second, into assets that earn while you rest. This is where most hustlers miss the mark. They're so focused on the next gig that they forget to build something that pays them even when they sleep. Assets come in many flavors: investments that generate cash flow, intellectual property like a book or a course, or scalable business models that don't collapse the second you take a day off. I once met a man in Texas who had been grinding 2 jobs for 20 years. When I asked him what he owned, he looked down and whispered, "Nothing." That broke me. 2 decades of hustle, and not a single pipeline built. That's the tragedy of unchanneled energy. Third, into networks that create opportunities beyond one person's labor. You see, hustlers often work alone, fueled by pride. "I'll do it myself," they say. But wealth, real, sustainable wealth, has always been a team sport. Your network is leverage. One phone call can save you 10 years of grinding. One introduction can change the trajectory of your life. If your hustle doesn't lead you to build connections, then it's just another cage, painted with the illusion of independence. And here's the philosophy that ties it all together. Every hustler must decide: are you digging ditches forever or building irrigation pipes that flow on their own? Digging ditches will give you today's water, but irrigation pipes will give you water for generations. Both require sweat, but only one builds freedom. This is where hustle finds its higher purpose, not in the grind itself, but in what the grind creates. Hustle should be the down payment on a system that pays you back, not just a treadmill you run on until your knees give out. So, when I look around and see young men and women wearing exhaustion like a crown, I don't judge them. I just want to whisper, channel it. Don't waste it. Use your hustle as capital and invest it into something that scales beyond you. And that brings us to the next step, the one you've been waiting for. How to create it step by step, because philosophy without action is just poetry. Let's talk about what it actually looks like to build those pipes. All right, enough philosophy for a moment. Let's roll up our sleeves, because if all we do is sit in this cafe and nod along, nothing changes. Hustle will keep chewing through your nights, your health, your family dinners. So here are some practical shifts. Small levers that can turn raw grind into freedom. Step 1. Audit your hustles. Take a hard look at where your hours are going. Which hustles are pure time-for-money traps? Drive 1 hour, earn 1 hour, stop, and the money vanishes. And which have the potential to scale? It's not about quitting your gig tomorrow, it's about clarity. Most people lie to themselves. They call every side hustle an opportunity, when really most of them are just another job. Write it down, see it clearly, don't romanticize what's bleeding you dry. Step 2. Set a hustle horizon. Here's the truth most hustlers avoid. You need an exit strategy, a finish line. Otherwise, hustle becomes a lifestyle, and that lifestyle eats you alive. Ask yourself, how long will I run this hustle before I redirect? 1 year, 2, 3, write the date down. When you reach it, pivot. Without a horizon, hustle will keep extending, like a shadow at sunset. Longer, darker, until it swallows you whole. Step 3. Redirect at least 20% of your hustle income into assets, not lifestyle creep. This is where most people blow it. They work a double shift, then celebrate with a new car, a bigger TV, or a weekend trip they can't afford. Congratulations, you've just traded your sweat for stuff that traps you further. Instead, take at least 20 cents of every extra dollar and invest it. Stocks, index funds, a small online business, intellectual property, whatever matches your appetite. The point isn't the vehicle, the point is direction. Money must start working for you, or it will always demand you work for it. Step 4. Learn to say no. This may sound simple, but it's the sharpest weapon you'll ever wield. The hustler's disease is mistaking busyness for progress. You fill every spare hour, thinking motion equals momentum. But freedom isn't built on constant yes. It's built on intentional no. Protect your energy. Every hour you spend chasing pennies is an hour you're not building pipelines. Now, let me illustrate with 2 lives that went very differently. The first is a young man I met in Chicago. He drove Uber at night, just like thousands of others. But here's the difference. He had a horizon. He told himself, 2 years and I'm out. During those 2 years, he poured every spare dollar into learning, building, and eventually launching an online course around digital marketing. At first, it earned him $50 a month. Laughable. But he kept tweaking, improving, growing. Within 3 years, that side project was paying more than his Uber shifts. He stepped away from the car, stepped into teaching full-time, and, more importantly, bought back his nights. Contrast that with another man I knew who hustled for 10 years straight. 2 jobs, 6 days a week, no plan, no exit. He wore hustle like a badge of honor. "Look how hard I grind," he'd say. But a decade later, his body was wrecked, his savings thin, and his marriage barely breathing. He traded a decade of his life for nothing but exhaustion. That, my friend, is the silent graveyard of hustle culture. Millions working themselves into the ground, mistaking movement for progress. So here's the fork in the road. Will your hustle become a bridge or a cage? And that leads us to our final stop today, reflection. Because tactics without philosophy are just chores. Let's zoom back out and talk about the deeper shift. Hustle without strategy. It's just another job, a shinier hamster wheel with better hashtags. But hustle with clarity, with a horizon, with discipline, with purpose, that becomes a bridge that carries you from survival into freedom. Here's the paradox most people miss. The dark side of hustle is slavery. The light side is leverage. Slavery demands you run faster just to stand still. Leverage allows your past efforts to carry you forward, even while you rest. The question isn't whether hustle is good or bad. The question is whether it's building your chains or building your wings. And I want you to think about this personally. Have you ever hustled so hard you forgot why you were doing it? Maybe you worked weekends for a year straight, only to realize your family barely recognized you anymore. Maybe you stacked 3 side gigs, yet still ended each month feeling broke, burned out, and behind. If that's you, you're not alone. That's the silent truth beneath all those #grindhard posts. People aren't bragging, they're begging for meaning. So here's my invitation. Share your story below. What's one time you hustled so hard that you lost sight of the why? You'd be surprised how many others have walked the same road, and how powerful it can feel to finally put words to it. And if you want to go deeper, beyond hacks, beyond empty motivation, into the truths schools and society never bothered to teach, this is what The Bridge Within is all about. Here, we don't just talk about money. We talk about freedom, clarity, and the quiet power of meaning. Every video is a journey across that inner bridge we all share, between logic and intuition, struggle and growth, knowledge and action. If you're ready to start walking that bridge, hit subscribe, and let's keep traveling together. Because hustle on its own won't save you. But the right mindset, the right strategy, and the right wisdom, that can change everything.